Fundamentals of Mixing, lesson number 16, high-pass filters, low-pass filters, and subtractive EQ. So now with the panning and levels, what we've got is we've got a basic scheme of things. And now what we want to do is we're going to try to start to work on creating some separation and opening up some sounds so that they kind of fit together a little bit better. And this is where the filtering kind of plays a big role in how we're going to approach this. Now, the thing about filtering and subtractive EQ, and the reason why I go that approach first, because what we're really going to do is we're going to fit things together, puzzle fit or piece things together a bit. And part of what pulls things forward is the fact that they're more full frequency. And part of what helps to move things backward is that they're kind of filtered down. So a lot of what we're going to do here is going to create some depth and separation and kind of limit some interference patterns. So some of the obvious interference patterns that I hear in this, and this is where we're going to start our focus here, is trying to see if we can set up a staging here for the fundamentals of the basics of the kick drum sound and the bass sound. And what I want to do here is, I think I'm going to start, because we had talked about doing an SSL E channel. And so hold on one second here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to set up two basic things just so we have this set up and running. And I believe it's under SSL here. And the UA World SSL E channel strip. Okay, so this will put it on my short list. And then I'm going to do the same here on the stereo track. That's not waves. And what I'll do here is SSL E channel. Okay, so when I now put this on a short list. Okay, so now a long short list, but a short list nonetheless. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy some of these things over to some of these individual channels, and then we can kind of work with this as we go along here. So let's just see here. I can just do that, and that'll lay that out right there. Cool. All right, so let's start by working with the kick drum here. The kick drum, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to primarily probably work with the black EQ. There was a brown EQ and a black EQ, different mods based on earlier revisions. There were actually many revisions of the SSL EQ, and they ended up in different consoles. There were actually, the way that it worked is there was a module strip, and so it was actually one big piece that pulled out with a motherboard that was maybe, I don't know, like I would say just a rough estimate about 1.5 feet or a little bit less than 0.5 meter deep downward, and it had a big edge connector that connected in for all the power and the audio connections. And then on it, on that mother card, you would put in or patch in into an edge connector an EQ card, a compressor card, VCA card, amplifier card, et cetera, et cetera. And so all these different elements would, you could replace them. So if you had a bad EQ card, you could pop it out, pop a new one in that was working, pop it into the console, and get the client back up and running quickly. So very easy to maintain in that way and figure out what's going on. Then you can repair the card with a test module in the shop, and you're good to go. What we're going to focus on here, though, is the one thing that I will probably, because like the whole thing about this is working with subtractive EQ, right? So that's what I wanted to primarily focus on. But the first thing I'm going to do is additive EQ. And I'm going to work with the black knob because it's a little bit more aggressive sounding, a little bit tighter pattern. The brown knob was part of the older series of SSL E consoles, and then this I think came in closer to the early 80s. This brown or black. So what I want to start with is here. Going to get to the beat. So that bell curve is in, and they don't give you an exact frequency, so it's somewhere up above 50 hertz. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chase this a little bit down on the bottom end. Just to kind of tighten it. I want to leave that low end in there. So what I have is a high pass, low pass filter, and I'm not going to be able to give you specific numbers, but that's below 20 hertz. And I'm also going to kind of tighten up that top end. And I'm going to focus that a little bit later, and you'll kind of see why, because I want that kick drum to kind of sink down in the speakers. It's also going to work in conjunction with this guy right here, which is the main loop that kind of runs through. Actually, this doesn't have a whole lot of low end in it. Oh, actually it does, right? It has that low end loop. So let's see what that interference sounds like here. So this is the beat channel right here. So I just want to see what happens if I filter some of this out. All right, so that actually helps in there. So I was wondering if there was like an interference pattern here, but what I need to do here, going back to the kick drum here, is to do a bit of a dip here. At like around 200 cycles, just to kind of tighten up that kick. Right, so when it kind of fits in here, it gets a little bit more focused. And I can do a boost here, but I want to get these guys to basically work together. Let's listen to what's going on with this guy. See, there's also like a because most of this is percussion, and it's just that low end bit. And I don't want this to interfere with what's going on here. So notice how the low frequency dips a bit. And then all of this kind of plays in as well, because we now have these two loops here that focus in on top of what's going on with the kick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide all these guys over. So we have kick. This guy is this drum loop, what's called drums. And we have two other ones, which is the crunchy and then the other loop, which is less crunchy. I'm going to get rid of this color thing here. And let's just move these guys up out of the way here. So that sounds like it's very pre-processed. And I wonder if this is even like that low end. Whether I need a lot of that low end. In other words, does that interfere with the kick, which is playing through that whole section? So notice how the low end drops a bit, punches through more. So there's an interference pattern there, just with that, by taking away the EQ. right? And I bet if I add this guy in, let's just go back here for a second. And now the filters are not affected by the black knob, brown knob thing, but so if I take these two guys and I can bypass these guys together. Let's go back to where they're playing. That helps. You can hear how the low end gets taken away a little bit there. And actually it makes this, the low end on this, like maybe this boost isn't really necessary. Right, I could hear like that kick drum that's like open up and start to drop. So let's see what happens with this. Right, so that adds like a nice little sub thing in there. So let's go back and not perfect by any stretch, but let me just go back here for a second. So this is on a shelf, like from about 300 cycles. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of dipping this down. Let this actually, because it just picks up in the chorus section, I don't want it to, it's not, like the extra low end is not really doing me any favors there. So that's where we were. All right, so just opening that up, and now I want to mix in the bass in with this. Now, is a kind of standard, I'm not sure which of these is the bass, so let's just start over again here. It was all the way over to the right. Okay. The thing about the bass in this, because and I'll probably work with a vintage EQ on this, except for maybe just a little bit of little warming up on the top end on the filter side. So we just, if you're curious, like this is always active without the EQ in, right? So there's a buzziness on the top of that bass that I'm gonna find a mid-range frequency for to bring it out, but I'm gonna take it away there to let it sync. So let's just hear what that sounds like in and out. So notice how the bass kind of pulls up in the speaker a bit. Now it drops, and like if notice like the hi-hats and some of the percussion elements, how that changes when I have this bypass. And now in. Of course it stopped when I was getting to it. Just how clear the percussion is. Now if you notice, it's not quite as clear. So that frequency on the bass, it actually, what's interesting is that not only does it shift the bass downward, it makes it clearer, and also takes away an interference pattern. You know, the bass doesn't need that. I can find a lower mid-range frequency like 800 or 1K or something, or 800 probably, somewhere in that area, that will actually make it cut really nicely through smaller speakers, give it, you know, what it needs. It doesn't need that edge, that crispy edge. There's too much other stuff going on in that mix. We want that bass to sink down with the kick drum. And so that's part of working with that low mids. Because if I now take, like, if I just take all those EQs out, let's think that includes everything we've done so far. So that's just subtractive EQ, basically. Right, so that actually is nice. It's opening up some space here. Now with some of these things, like the claps, one of the things that kind of bug me about this, I'm just gonna work. The soft filter on that bottom end, but I'm also going to put some to warm the claps up on the top end. Because there's too much noisiness up on that upper top end. It loses its power. All right, so let's find a place for it. All right, so I overdid it a bit. All right, so now what we're going to have to work with here is getting these three guys to kind of work together. Okay, so let's just see what we got here. And all right, so we have there's a tambourine, which can occupy more of that top end. We got a snare. Now the thing with the snare here on this end, let's find where the fundamental is. It's like right in there. So it's like, it's usually somewhere in like the 150 to 200 range. All right, so I just wanted to find that. Now I'm going to filter down underneath it. Because I want to raise this, it doesn't need to be so bulky on that bottom end. And then let's just see if there's a like a mid-range kind of clogging frequency in here. And let's see how this kind of plays in with a Now, normally if with a digital EQ, what I would do is I would probably tighten up the Q to sharpen it so that there's probably a frequency, a resonant frequency somewhere up in there that, like I'll just do, like, see if I can find that. It's probably going to be somewhere. that would be like a sharpness. It's just a touch. Let's see. I'm actually going to leave that off. Just let this guy kind of pull its weight in there. And I'm going to shift that mid-range dip down a little bit. So that they actually, what happens is with that, just that little cut that's somewhere in that like 500 range in there. The two of those, you can hear them now work together and isolate from each other. So let's just say that if I have these two guys now, I can bypass them. All right, so they sound like there's less high end and there's lower in level. That's going to fit much better into the mix though. And watch, here we... Now we got the top end of the tambourine finding its place in there. So let's go back. See how they cut right through? The only thing I boosted there was a little bit on the fundamental of that snare drum. And this guy here, Mr. Tambourine Man, I'm actually still going to pull a little away from the top end here. Sometimes there's like a heel to it that has some low end punch, and sometimes it's just not necessary with but that high frequency cut will keep that tambourine sounding like a tambourine. It'll cut some of the noise. See how less focused it is. Now it's like it's tighter and more focused in that area. So let's just see what we got here. Now when we get to the compression phase, this is going to kind of tie together like a lot nicer. So let's just see what we got here. Just focus on imaging. Let's see. So you got the definition on the low end. The bass kind of sinking into place better. Definition on the snare drum. Defined energy on the kick drum. Right? All that just like mud, just with subtle tweaks here or there. All right, and then we have some other, let's just see. Not sure what to actually do with these guys. I have so many other elements in here. Let me just see. It'll take out whatever it is that we're not working with here. Those are just reverse cymbals and stuff like that, so that's probably okay. just clear the field here so I know what it is that I'm looking at. And then we got our 2 hi-hats. Okay, so this is going to seem crazy because there's no low end here on this. I'm still going to filter down there and do still a touch on the top end. Again, similar to the tambourine, it actually makes it more focused. It also is going to get it to sit back a little bit in the speaker. So let's go over to the other element. This has already got a warmer top end, so we're getting the top end from there. So let's find out what that low end is on that. So what I'll do is I'll just... Right, so that's starting to get into like the 300 range. So as I'm working up here, right, that actually makes it sound a little bit more natural. It might even keep that boost in there. There's something else here that has like a, I'm not sure if it's, of course it always, all right. Or maybe it's this guy. No. That's where it is. So I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to tone that back a little bit. All right, so that energy raises a little bit. All right, so it's only on that one part. Okay, so now if we work with the totality of that. And it's going to play a benefit as we kind of move forward in with some of the other elements here. All right, so there was a rim shot here. That's actually, we'll step back to that one. Let's see, there was those. Let's see what happens here with this. All right, so I'm going to filter it down pretty tight. This is going to fit in. Let's just see how this fits in with some of the others. That filtering there creates a nice separation. All right, and then here it is just like a reverse. There's just a little bit on it, on that reverse part. It starts a little bit low. It actually doesn't have a whole ton of high frequency in it. So I want it to kind of come from behind. I'm going to warm up that top end a little bit. And just become a little more subtle in that area. So let's go back. Without. Without again. Notice what I want you to notice is focus on just the imaging up and down as I bypass and bring it back in. Let's go back here. A little kind of tighter, a little bunched in the middle. All right, so you hear the low end drop. The top end raise, even though there's less of it. It's really bizarre because if you look on almost every channel, I trimmed away top end. And this is one of those things where like never trim top end, never, like they don't, it's like the evil thing. There's all this hair and stuff that's up there. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you leave it on everything, then you hear it on nothing. That's kind of the thing there. Like we need that for the vocal so that the vocal kind of rises up. So if you got a lot of this stuff on some nonsense part that only plays in certain sections or, is not an integral part of the mix, it's like, why am I going to let that interfere with the most important element of the song, which is the vocal, or some other element in there that needs that air in that space? Because later on, when we want to raise those strings up and or those pads and some of those other parts and create that depth and space and height, we want to have some place to go. And these guys were kind of actually being a little bit more toned or filtered down plays like a huge, part in making this whole thing come together here. I'll leave that crash symbol as is. One thing I haven't gotten to is the rim shot, which is not that important of a part in all of this, but let's see, we still have to address it. Let's see what we got. All right, let's see what that sits in there with just a little 120 and 12K. So I think you could get a good idea of what's going on here from this. So this will be part one, and then we'll continue on and start to bring in some of the other elements as we go along, just to end this portion of the class. So anyway, this is part one, and we'll kind of take it from here. So, all right, that's a wrap on this part of lesson 16, and then we'll pick up with other instrumentation. So this was just drums and percussion.